Hello, my name is Dan Vlamis. I'm the president of Analytics and Data Oracle User Community, and I'm kind of moderating this discussion that we're having on our favorite features of OAC. I'm joined today by panelists wayne.vansluys and Lalitha from Product Management of Oracle Analytics and philippe.lions from Oracle Analytics Product Management. So welcome, everybody. We have a few intro comments, and then we'll get into the meat of the matter, talking about our favorite new features. So welcome. Just to get into, we also encourage you to, we put on the email addresses out there on the title slide. We'll make these slides available, and we encourage you to reach out to us with any comments. We try to have kind of an open community. And we also have on the bottom, just so you know, we encourage you to submit some Q&A, your own questions. We have experts here that can answer your individual questions. So encourage you to put that in the chat box. We like to use that for things that are more to the general people that are there. We open it up so that you can put in, for instance, where you're from. Hello from Kansas City here. And just say hello. We try to foster a community. Just so you know, we have also, this is part of a user community called Analytics and Data Oracle User Community. And so we try to keep things very informal. We do have some links in here for more information. If you want to know about Oracle Analytics, this is a link directly to their YouTube channel. And you'll find specifically on there a video playlist of the new features in the July 2023 release that is in the process of rolling out to customers right now. And there's also, we have a link there to the documentation on the new features. You can see step by step what the new features are, and link to the community and live demos. If I can ask one of my colleagues to put that into the chat so you can have those links at your disposal and be able to look at that. We'll also make the slides. We do record this session, so if you have colleagues that missed this, they can go on to the Analytics and Data Oracle community, user community website and see more on that. This is in a series of webcasts called the Analytics and Data Oracle User Community TechCasts. We've been doing this for going on 5 years now, and you can see the on our live TechCast page, you can see the upcoming features and what we're going to be doing with that. And so if you look on here, we have several that are replaying for various topics. We also have an archive that are also on our YouTube channel. Wayne actually edits these and makes them available. Thanks, Wayne, for that. We also encourage you to submit your own ideas for TechCasts. If you have something you can present, you can go to AnDOUC.org/TechCasts and send your own proposal for that. And this user community meets every 2 weeks or so and selects what we're going to do in future TechCasts. So join us. We also have merchandise, so you can support the user community with our mugs and luggage tags and so forth. So we'd love to see you there. Join us on our various social media platforms. There's all sorts of information on here. You can, probably the most active is our Slack workspace in here, and the TechCast series is talked about in here, and join us in our community stuff. I also want to take a moment to plug our upcoming conference called Analytics and Data Summit 2024. We're back from being back from COVID times, and we had a fantastic summit conference in 2023. This takes place at the Redwood Shores Conference Center from Oracle. And we do have our call for speakers is now open. It's not taking place till March, but we'll be deciding that this fall, who gets to speak. So submit your abstracts. There's a link at andouc.org/AND Summit 2024, or snap a picture of that QR code and come join us for, if you're interested in this type of stuff, join up with others and see a plethora of sessions, a 3-day conference, all talking about this type of topic. We're going to get into our meat of the topic now. If you want, this is what we're going to be going over. Wayne's going to be talking about Data flows and semantic layers, I'll talk about Spark chart visualization on tiles and the new tile properties, some stuff on filters and the native connection to analytic views. Philippe's going to join and talk about the synonyms for ask and the lines on scatter graphs, and Lalitha is going to talk about the some actually really cool stuff on explain enhancements. And then we'll have a survey at the end. With that, before I turn things over to Wayne, anything I missed, folks? All right, Wayne, I'm going to let you take it away.
All right, let's go. So my two that I chose, one of them actually came from the Idea Lab. So if you're not familiar with the Oracle Analytics Idea Lab, we'll post that URL, but this request came about 3 years ago, to the ability to share data flows. If you're aware that data flows were pretty much tied to the person that created them. And now we have the ability to go into a data flow, into the inspect. If my cursor would behave. We can now assign access. So now it's not just tied to me. I can go into maybe here and say, I want to allow my data viz authors to be able to have control or just read write. And now this is powerful. It's not lost to just when I leave if I were to leave the client or the company, that object would have been basically gone. Now we can share amongst people. So that's one. And then the other, we're not going to see this one, is the semantic model. So the online semantic modeler, again, was only allowed or accessible by the main author, or if you were to have maybe put it into a Git repository. So now I have the ability to share, use either, which Git was the how it was deployed. Oracle made that available through a Git repository, but now I can just use it through sharing permissions. So again, maybe I want to have my BI data modelers, all of them who are in that role, to be able to access my semantic model. So with that, those are my two new favorites out of the release of this last July update to Oracle Analytics Cloud. Dan, who's next?
I guess I am. So let me share my screen, show some of the stuff that I was especially interested in highlighting. So I chose a few things to look at. One is, and I'll spend most of my time on talking about the Spark chart visualization. And I'm going to try something out with you all. I hope you don't mind me using you all a bit as guinea pigs. And one of the things I did is I'm using one of the features that's been there for a while, adding a note. And I'm kind of trying to do my PowerPoint slide in the product in OAC. So the tile capability is in there. If we look at the list of visualizations in here, we can see several different types of things. There's the new performance tile, and notice that this says tile deprecated. This is the old performance tile, which is still there, still runs, but there is so much more newer in the new tile visualization that can do just about everything that this one does. Notice it says deprecated. I'm assuming that will go away eventually. So one of the tips is consider migrating any content you have onto the tile. We ran into this because we just didn't want our client that we're building stuff for to see deprecated. Just looks bad. So anyway, but that's a clue to move off of that. I experimented. This is from our normal dashboard that we use for a lot of demos. And I put this note on, I just hovered this note on top of it with my notes to talk about with you all. And this performance tile, we're trying to show several things on this dashboard. One of the things that we do on many of our dashboards is we use the upper left-hand corner in effect as the subject area of the individual using this as a dashboard, using this canvas as a dashboard. So this is EBITDA for the last 12 months. Now, normally I would just say EBITDA 3.2 million. We'd leave it at that. Interesting enough, as I prepared this, I started using the Spark chart capability. And the problem I have with using the Spark charts on here is there's not much context. I don't know what time period is in here. So that's why I put that in the title of here, the custom tile EBITDA for last 12 months, so you know. And then the other is, what's the granularity of the data that you're going to show here? Is it weekly, monthly, and so forth? So recognize on this type of tile, if I put on here on the grammar pane, you can see I added a category chart on here, and I'm looking at monthly data. I dragged that over in order to get that. So that's what I'm working. We have now, if you haven't caught up with the new tile capability, we have the ability to put not just one measure, but multiple measures. Notice EBITDA, earnings before income taxes, depreciation, and amortization is in there. And I can also put additional measures that appear. You have control over whether you want them across or down, how that works. We have control in here within this chart is the capability that was new a while ago. It's actually been around for a while. But now we have the ability to make that different types align with area, or a bar chart, for instance. We can have the high-low marks either shown or not shown, highlighted in red and green, that type of thing. We have a fair amount of control over this now, including the font size and everything. One of the things you can do, by the way, is you can take this chart and put it below everything. Frankly, as a best practice, I don't like that, because I think it becomes less clear that the measure that's being shown here is EBITDA when you put it down below, when you have multiple measures. So my suggestion is keep that next to it if you can. As well, just some other things that are in here, the ability to abbreviate this 3.2 million, and it automatically figures out in here what it should show. If I change my selection here to communication, you'll see that that's dynamic in here, and now it changes to K. These are million and so forth. One of the things that comes up, by the way, I might want this in the case of 2 million to have one decimal place, and in some cases have, unfortunately, the number of decimal places is fixed. We also have the ability to hover over here. I added in the grammar pane in here the ability for this to have a tooltip, and I can add additional measures in here, something to add a little more interest. Not sure if you want to do that or not. Think about the grain of what you're showing, abbreviate. There's the ability to control the color of the viz of this, but I would generally go with the color that you assign to the measure. I think that's a best practice. In this dashboard, I'm not showing that as much, but if you have measures assigned to colors, use that, that color for that line. Bear in mind, when you provide a dimension across, I would really recommend most of the time you use a time dimension across. Reason is there is no labeling given to this small graph that's here. And if I don't know it's across company or across organization or division, you can see some of those pieces of this dashboard we put together, then I don't know what this is across unless you highlight it in the title. You can also bear in mind that the tile is very nice to have this category chart. If you want more flexibility, you can kind of create your own by creating a very small performance tile and then a graph right next to it. These graphs actually work relatively well if you turn off things like legends and axis labels and put them right next. You can build your own dashboard. You're kind of building your own though in that way. So those are some of the comments I especially wanted to highlight when it comes to performance tiles, and welcome any questions that you all have on performance tiles. I also want to sneak in a little bit. I don't have as much to show on this, but the ability to have be able to I have this filtered down to communications, gains, services, various lines of business. Within that, I have in here a dashboard filter. And we have now, if you haven't caught up, parameters have been out in the product for a while now, but I dragged over a P3 line of business for this. And that allows me to set the parameter. Think of parameters as much like the repository variables that were in the classic product. We have that in there now. What's new in the July release is the ability to bind the value of a parameter to a specific column in the database. So now if I come in here and look at the various parameters and I edit this, I can see I can have any lines of business, I can set any possible values. Before, we had to, in order to get the list of values that could be included in this dropdown in here, we had to then run a SQL script to try and get the values in here. Now it's automatic. There's a great video on there that shows how to do this. I'm not going to try and go through it all, but now with that ability, it begs the question whether you should do prompts up at the top. Do we include them in dashboard controls across, down, whatever? We have a lot of flexibility in the environment now for controlling all of this. So this allows me to change what's appearing on the dashboard, and that binding makes it a lot easier to use these. Frankly, I'm still getting used to the new ways of doing this and how we can effectively use these parameters. It becomes more of a programming way of controlling a dashboard. The other thing I wanted to be able to show, and I wanted to come in here and show it live. I just ran out of time, so I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit and use the videos. If you come out here and look at the new features playlist in here, let me just go there directly just for a moment. These are all, we have the list of this URL is in the chat, and you can see videos that Oracle has put together of all of the new features showing that, and you can see little 3-minute videos on it, very well done, and allows us to see this type of stuff. I'm going to click on the Spark Charts one and play this and just kind of talk over it. And there's normally audio, I've turned it off though. In here, we now have we can add to a, I don't want this one. I grabbed the wrong one. I wanted to talk about this. So you can see the Spark Charts one. That's where I got some of the ideas in here. I also want to show sourcing from analytic views. So if I come in and look at analytic views, we have the capability of adding a connection type of Oracle Analytic Views is a new type of connection. So just like you have or ADW, that type of thing, if you look at inspecting that, you can see all you need is a host port SID, the connection information, and OAC will interrogate the database and ask what are all the analytic views that you can access from this. So if I then create that connection, you specify what data set you want to create. It looks at what analytic views are available, and think of this a bit as a mini semantic model that you create in the database instead of in the OAC layer. So when I then grab that, what you see is a bunch of the analytic view components that you set up in the database for product. For instance, if I expand that, you'll see because of setting this up, I have a hierarchical column for product. I can then drill down on geography, see there's a hierarchical column for geography and various measures. All this, including the aggregation rules, all the complexity, the power of really what is an OLAP engine is inside of there. I can drag 3 components, a product, a revenue, and a geography type of dimension from there and drill down on those. There's a lot of power in there. And so now we have the ability to create these directly from what's in your Oracle database. And so I think that we no longer have to use a semantic layer to access analytic views. We can access them directly from the data visualization capabilities. Those are the features I especially wanted to highlight. I think I'll turn that over to Philippe and answer any questions that people have in the Q&A panel while Philippe presents his stuff.
Hey, thanks very much, Dan. I think this was great. I do love the features you've presented. The analytics view in particular is a very powerful source for Oracle Analytics. So thanks for sharing this. So hey, good. Let me share my screen. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone. So I'm Philippe. I'm from Oracle Product Management, and here with me today is Lalita as well, lalitha.venkataraman. So both of us are going to talk about some of our preferred new features as well. And I'll use only a few minutes because I really want to leave room for Lalita. You'll see what she'll talk about. She'll talk some augmented capabilities, which in my opinion are very exciting. But I do want to take 4 minutes to talk about two features. One of them, which is indeed a new feature in the latest release, which is synonyms. Synonyms is a capability to use different semantics when we query a data set. So you probably are familiar with ASK. And if you have turned on search indexes on data sets, like this is our demo data set here, sample order lines, the indexing allows to query the data set by just typing product, just typing names of columns, and it will, I did click on the right one. So here are sales by product. But if I'm French, and maybe I don't know the exact English name for the columns, and let me actually ask it in Spanish, for instance. If I ask for ventas, which is sales in Spanish, or if I had another semantic for this, it wouldn't find anything for ventas, despite, I would expect that data set to return. So the July release now holds a capability in the data set. So if I go to inspect in the data set, and if I look at this data set search index right there, you will see that, so I have turned on the indexing for names of columns. And next to the attribute or the columns that we're asking here to index, there is a field for entering synonyms. So I can enter whatever semantic I would like to use instead of order line ID, and that will be picked up by ASK. So I have already done this for time's sake. I have entered some French words here for product name, produit, which is a French word, or chiffre d'affaires, which is a multiple word semantic. So I could have another example here, multiple word example. And as I hit enter now, this is adding this one as a synonym. To have this activated, I just need to run this now. This would take 30 seconds. I actually ran it not so long ago. So I'm not going to run it just to save 30 seconds waiting on the screen, but we're going to use what I just did a few moments ago, and I'm not going to save this. I'm just going to try to enter produit by chiffre d'affaires. Oh my God. This is the French word for it, and I'm going to hit Control Enter or Shift Enter, and hopefully it recognized that this was product name and the chiffre d'affaires was sales. This is the synonym for it. So that feature is pretty simple to manage, and it has also an ability to help you remember, or it will remember what you've entered in different data sets for the same word. So it will offer you old synonyms to reuse if you want to. So enabling better usability for users. So that was my first quick feature. The second one I want to
interrupt you for just a moment. This is Dan. One of the things we found in using the synonyms or the ask feature that people don't think about if you enter into this is think about what you want to make available. If you have when we're in development, we have lots of copies of things. And so the tip is for folks, when you do this, the data sets that you want to index are the ones that you want to make available to everybody, not every development copy that you happen to have. So just a tip, otherwise you get too many things from different subject areas or different data sets, and you don't know, the users don't know which to pick.
Yeah, there's some governance there. Yes, absolutely. Thanks for the pointer. The other quick one, and I'll take just 2 minutes. This is actually a new feature, not from the last release, but the one before. I do want to highlight it because I love it. This is a scatter plot in Oracle Analytics, and it shows some data points which may represent a sequence. And we have sales and discount, and maybe these are quarters or they represent some sequence. But I have no evidence on how this happened either over time or over that sequence, except that now in Oracle Analytics, in the scatter properties here, I have an option to connect the dots with a line, and this will use a sequence that is buried in the grammar itself. So here in my grammar, I have customer segment. So basically I started, whatever my sequence is defined by my categories, I started here, then went down on discount and remained low, high on sales, then went high on discount, and so on. So this is a lot more indicative, and of course, if you change the sequence, the information could be very different. So these are the same dots, exact same dots, but the line is different. So now maybe this is showing some strategy or results of a strategy where we've increased or decreased discount and increased or decreased profit over time. And of course, I can't resist. So if you add dots, of course, that will show more and more dots, and it will be meaningful as you're not looking just as at dots, but you're looking at a trending sequence. So you can also, of course, change the dot size and have something that represents almost only the line. And since these are sales about Oracle Analytics, and we in the PM team love Oracle Analytics, I'm going to give you a little bit more picture of the sales of Oracle Analytics. That's just a blink just to say we love it. All right, but the feature of line is something that I really encourage you to look at, because it changes the value and the functional value of the scatter plot. With this, I'll pass it on to Lalita to talk to us about Explain. Lalita?
Hey, thank you, Philippe.
You're welcome.
Nice one with the last heart sign there. Okay, so let me share. Okay, I'm going to talk about an important feature. It's my favorite. I mean, the feature existed earlier, but we made some enhancements to the column explain feature that improves the overall usability of this feature, and also gives you, the user, control over how to influence the insights that this explain generates. So let me show you a demo and walk through all the enhancements that we've made. So what you're seeing here is a classic star schema model. So I have my fact table with 71K rows and a bunch of dimension tables, classic. So let me now click on create workbook so I can start using the explain feature. So you may be familiar with explain. So some of this may be something that you've used earlier. So I want to explain revenue, which is a metric in my fact table. So I click on explain, and this opens the explain page for me. And I see different tabs here. The first one is basic facts. So behind the scenes, explain is running an algorithm that will give me some basic summary information about revenue. So it's telling me revenue is a numeric measure whose sum across 71K rows. So that's the grain of my fact table. So it has 71K rows. So it is telling me what is the total revenue value across this entire table. Now, as I scroll down, it is showing me the distribution of revenue by several attributes or columns in my data set. So first I see it is showing me how revenue distributes across bill date. So that's a date column in my fact table. So there are different grains of this date field. So it's showing me revenue by day of month, by month, and Wednesday, which is the weekday, right? So it is showing me these, and I do see that these visits are interesting because there is some variation in the trending here. Okay. As I scroll down, I see revenue by several other attributes: order status, currency, order type. These are all columns from my fact table, which you see behind. And then there are some columns like income level, marital status, which are attributes from my customer dimension table. As I scroll down, I see some geographical columns like state, region, country, etc., which are coming from yet another dimension table, which is addresses. And then a bunch of columns from my product dimension table. Right. So this is classic. What I'm noticing is that it is showing me these visits, basically the distribution by a select few attributes from my data set. So it's not picking all the attributes from all the tables in my data set, but just a few of them, right? And I also noticed that I now have a settings button available in basic facts. So you may be aware that we introduced the settings button capability, but just for segments a couple of releases back. In July, settings is available across all the tabs in Explain, right? So let me now look at settings. So when I open this, I'm seeing that the first section here shows me all the tables in my model, and the algorithm basically selected a few default columns. So if I expand the fact table, the algorithm has identified a few columns from the total 20 columns in my fact. So it identified bill day date, which is a date column, as an interesting column. That's how it generated these visits, and a few other columns. Same with the other tables. So in customers, it again selected 4 out of the 18 columns, same with products, etc. So by default, when you open explain, the algorithm selects a few default columns and uses these columns to come up with these insights. Now, how did the algorithm arrive at these default columns? Couple of ways. If you have auto insights enabled on your dataset, so you may be aware, auto insights is an augmented capability that we introduced some time back. So every time you upload a new data set, auto insight kicks off behind the scenes and it computes a lot of stats or gathers a lot of stats about all the columns in your data set. So this already exists in the product. Now in Explain, what we have done is we've leveraged these stats that are already computed and available, and we've used these stats to smartly select the default columns. So we're using these stats to pick the columns that we believe are interesting to the user. And we have used those as the default column selection and arrived at these whizzes. Now, if you don't have auto insights enabled on your dataset for whatever reason, then by default, the algorithm will select the top n columns in each of these folders. So either way, the algorithm selects a subset of columns from your entire dataset. And by doing that, basically, we are restricting the number of columns or the number of whizzes that we are generating by default when you open the Explain screen. So your performance should be better. Because we are not running many queries across all your columns in the dataset. So that's an enhancement that we've made. But as a user, you have the ability to override these default column selections, right? So this is my data set. And I know that, I'm not interested in bill date, so I don't want this. I'm interested in order dates, right? And in order date, let's say I'm only interested in the month grain. I don't want to go to the day grain. So I select just the month in order date. And I'm not interested in currency. So I select and deselect the columns that are of interest to me. Same with customers, right? I don't want keys, so let me uncheck these two. I keep income level, marital status, and let's say I want to also look at, distribution of revenue by gender. In addresses, state is too granular for me, so I don't want it. Let me remove all states and let's just keep region and country. We don't need codes. So I'm now refining the columns that I'm going to send to the underlying algorithm. So in product, again, let me remove the keys and just keep, product type, brand, etc. So what have I done here? I am now selecting the columns that I want to focus on because I know these are the columns that are relevant. So I want to get some insights on these columns. So I select them and hit apply. So now the Explain algorithm is going to run again, but this time it is going to take into consideration only the columns that I've selected. Now, what I want to clarify here is it's only restricting or focusing on the columns that I've selected, but it does not change the grain of the data set. So the grain of the data set still remains the grain of your fact table. So it's still going to consider your entire 71K rows, which is the rows in your denormalized complete data set. All that I'm doing by changing the column settings is narrowing down the columns to those that I want to focus on, right? So now that I've done this, so summary remains the same, but as I scroll down and I look at the breakdown by various attributes, I'm now seeing attributes that I selected in my settings. So earlier I was seeing bill date, but because I said I'm not interested in bill date, it's now showing me order date at a month grain. Some of these are defaults, and gender is what I picked up. So I see, how revenue distributes by gender. And as I scroll down, I no longer see my state information, only country, region, etc. So now I've been able to focus on the columns that I'm interested in, right? If I move to the segments tab, again, the same thing. All these segments are restricted to the columns that I have selected. So if I open the settings again, you will notice that the columns that I selected in the basic fact settings carry over to segments as well. So I'm continuing to focus on order date and the other columns that I selected, right? So any column selection that I make in settings and hit apply, those columns are kept in perspective for all the other tabs as well. So basically, we are ensuring that all the insights that are generated across the tabs in Explain use the same set of columns. So you're focusing on the same set of columns and getting your insights. But the scope of selection of these columns is just for your workbook session. right? So if you close the workbook and come back and open a column, you go back to your default selection, and then you override it with your own columns of interest and continue your analysis, right? Same with anomalies. If you look at these, so it is looking at marital status, which was one of the columns that I selected as a column of interest. Now that's about a metric. Now let me go and open an attribute from a dimension table, right? So this is my customer dimension table. So let me explain income level, right? So now this customer's table has 1,000 records, and you may remember that the fact table has 71,000 records. So now in basic facts, it is telling me that income level is a text attribute. It has 9 unique values across 71,000 rows. So although I selected a column, I'm explaining a column from the customer's dimension table, which is 1,000 rows. Explain is considering the entire data set. It is taking all the tables into consideration to arrive at the insights, even though the column is coming from a dimension table. That's another enhancement that you will see in the July upgrade. As I scroll down, I see now distribution of income by various facts. So these are facts from my, my SAMP revenue fact table, and I'm able to see how income level distributes across all these facts, right? So it is considering the entire data set. If I go to key drivers, again, income level is from my customer dimension table. The algorithm considered all the attributes from all the tables, and it found out that product description, which is in the product table, is strongly correlated to income level. Same with bill date, right? Again, it is considering all the tables in my data set. Same thing with segments. So if you notice segments here, there are segments here which involve columns from multiple tables like revenue, customers, etc. Right? So all my insights here, even though my column is coming from a fact table or a dimension table, like in this case, all my insights here are generated using the complete data set involving all the tables in the model. So I can continue to go and override my columns, refine it, bring in more columns, remove columns that are not influencing my insights, and continue my analysis. Now, one thing that I want to clarify here, right? This first section are columns. And like I mentioned earlier, all the column selections that you make here apply to all the tabs in Explain, right? So anything that I override here will also update the insights and basic facts, key drivers, and anomalies. This section here, as it calls out, is specific to segmentation settings only. So if I change this to say 3 and hit apply, or I change the segment size, these settings apply only to the segments tab. That's why we call it segmentation settings. So those settings do not impact my other columns. Okay, so those are the enhancements that we made on the Explain feature. So this is going to take a few seconds to come up, but while this comes up, there is one important aspect that I wanted to show you. Okay, this is a multi or a star schema model, and we saw that all the insights considered all the tables in the model. So how did it do that? That's an enhancement in July. And how did it do that? So there is one important setting that you need to make in your data model to enable this behavior, right? So in this case, I need to flag my fact table with the preserve grain flag, right? So this is basically going to tell my underlying algorithms what is the fact table that holds all my metrics, right? So what is the grain of the table that holds all my metrics? So in case of a star schema model or a multi-table data set, it is important for you to flag the fact table with preserve grain. Once you do this, all the queries on your Explain algorithm will compute your insights using all the tables in your model. So you may be explaining a column from customers or products, but your underlying sequence will go against your complete data set as long as you have the preserve grain flag set, which is what you should ideally do in a star schema model. If you don't have this flag set, then when you explain a column from customers, it is only going to consider this table. It will not even look at the other tables, which was the behavior before July. So from July onwards, we truly support a star schema model as long as you set the preserve grain flag on your fact table. So those are the enhancements that we've made to Explain feature. And with these enhancements, we believe the explain feature becomes a lot more powerful. It allows you to, customize or narrow down your focus on a specific few columns that are of business interest to you, and then, drive all the underlying algorithms to hopefully generate better insights. So that's what I wanted to cover today.
Thank you, Lalitha. A question for you. I hope you don't mind.
Sure.
When it comes to the explain, you went and tailored those settings based on the individual columns you were interested in. Is that shareable across multiple users, or is it really, it sounded like it was just for that individual session. I'd be interested in doing that even across reloading the data. Any plans to make it so we can keep that across sessions?
Right now, we don't have it on the roadmap, but if you think that's an important enhancement, that's something we can definitely consider, I think.
Even the ability to recall them. I may spend a while figuring it all out and then want to be able to redo that tomorrow, the next day, something like that. So, okay. So I guess something to put in the enhancement area that Wayne was talking about, right?
Yeah, place for the idea lab. Perfect.
Put it in the idea lab. The people can upvote it.
There, and it gets voted on. And Oracle's watching the idea lab. So
yeah, that's what I understand. I've seen some of the stuff in the idea lab make it into the product. So it's exciting. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. We do have a poll that I want to fire on this. And let me try and share the screen. There was too much to show, folks. With all the things that were added, even in just one release. So we're asking what your favorite feature is. I'm going to try and showcase behind the scenes. Let's see if this works. Some of the features, hopefully this shows behind the favorite feature. And we're going to ask you what your favorite feature are. This isn't all the ones that were in there, but some of them just to list them: Spark chart visualization on tiles. I tried to showcase that, tuning and constraining data viz filter properties. I didn't even get into that a little bit. You do have the ability now to change that out a little bit. Parameters, the new binding variables, I talked a little bit about that. It's not a full demo. You should look at the videos that Oracle put together on that. And the parameters is expanding. I think with every release, they're going to add more and more capabilities to parameters to where it really, truly does everything that you can do with the variables, semantic variables in the RPD. Sharing data flows and semantic layers, Wayne talked about. Sourcing Oracle Analytics from analytic views, talked about that. The augmented analytics. There are also, by the way, additional connections to Snowflake and Vertica. We didn't even get into that. And there was, hey, if you aren't clued in, take a look at the preview section, and there's a workbook email scheduler that's in there. And there is a way to, in the console, turn on your preview of new things that Oracle isn't supporting yet, but you can start playing around with it. So the workbook email scheduler is in there. That's what it looks like to turn that thing on. So we're going to let that run for a little bit. Do we have votes in? Is that fired? I cannot see how many we have people that have voted. As a panelist, I can't vote. So there are the results. I'll put this up so we share it if it doesn't pop up on yours. So the favorite was sharing data flows and semantic layers and parameters by the audience. And so that's good to see. So people interested in the new stuff. With that, I'm going to try and offer a chance for people to ask any questions. Please put them in the Q&A. I have the Q&A widget open. So we'd love for you to share any questions you have on this, or for that matter, your favorite sessions. I'm going to go ahead and read a question that just came in from Shankar, and I'll see what panelists can help out with this. Shankar asks, can we use the scatter plot sequence? My guess is this is going to you, Philippe, to show most popular product purchased rate ranking sequence among 5 products while varying 3 customer segments, say. And then you can read the rest of this. Is it possible to make this a trellis scatter plot of 3 segments within 5 products in a different sequence?
So showing the most, yeah, what I mean, what I understand from your question, Shankar, is you're talking about the the most popular sequence. So there is an algorithm for this, which is an OAC from the database. Now, calculating what is the most, you could certainly show this using the scatter plot, but maybe I would recommend a network visualization as well, because it may turn out pretty busy visually, but I don't see why you couldn't represent this with the vanilla line with the example that I showed. You just need to make sure that the data, or do you have that proper sequence set in your data set so you can visualize it? Now, calculating the sequence is a different question, and there's an algorithm for this, and it is part of OAC. So that's it. You know, if you have questions on this, I'll be happy to help. But I think you should be able to visualize it with the scatter plot, and indeed to show using trellis is a great idea as well.
Okay. Thanks, Philippe. Others, put your questions in. We'll cut off at the top of the hour, or if no questions, come in again. But otherwise, continue to put those in. We also have some SHIB. Another question. Hello, any specific settings required to connect BI Publisher, OAC Classic, with Snowflake? Like in OAS, we had to copy the jar file and domain $domain hub/lib. I don't know this one. Anybody help out?
I don't know the answer to that question. The person who could help you with this is a PM called Alan Lee.
Yep.
The best is send an email and I'll forward it to Alan, because I don't know the answer to your question.
It's a good question. You should be able to BI Publisher. If you're not familiar, the new name is Analytics Publisher, is now part of the analytics package. So I would expect that the Snowflake and Vertica connectors could be used with that. But haven't tried it. It's too new.
I don't know.
So good question. Folks, go ahead and put your other questions in. If I don't see any come in soon, I'm going to close the webcast. But from Scott, might be better for a chat, as it is August. Should I be concerned that we are still on the May 2023 release? Wondering if anyone else has not been updated. You know, I'm going to handle this one because I ran into this with my customer instance. We have a customer. I wanted to use some of the new stuff. It's not on either, Scott. I don't know what's going on. I have not sent the email off to say, hey, what's taking a while to get us on this? I don't know.
Let me ask you this question. Yeah. So I've also seen a few. Now, do you have an email scheduling your upgrade or not yet? I guess it's the question. So you have an email, right, Dan? You have received an email scheduling your date, right?
Yeah. Well,
Okay, so
the
you have
admin
right?
of the instance received the email scheduling our client to upgrade.
Yeah.
We have an internal Vlamis instance. That one we got an email on. Yes, it was updated. We got our update in July, mid-July. So I think it's just taking longer to roll them out to the various customers. And there is an email to the admin person.
Okay, Scott, if you haven't received that email, then either email us or fire an SR, because it is possible that a few instances are not yet upgraded, but you should definitely have a visibility at this point with an email. And if you don't, let us help you with the that visibility. It shouldn't be a long time at this point. I don't know why, but there may have been some delay. But I just want to you have not received. I've seen your. Okay. Cool. Best way is an SR, by the way.
One thing that we've done at Vlamis to work around this at times is create a new instance and just run it for a while, just so we can see the new feature when we weren't scheduled to be an upgrade. You can always do your manual upgrade by creating a new instance, taking a snapshot and recover the snapshot, but it's a bit of a pain. It's nicer when Oracle does it for you. That's the whole concept of a cloud managed platform. They do it for you. Good question. Any other questions from folks? Give another chance, and let me also give the opportunity for any of my panelists to add something if they want to add something else in here. While you're thinking about that, I'll mention another plug for our Analytics and Data Summit 2024. You can register if you're into this type of stuff. We talk about analytics, data, machine learning, spatial and graph. All these topics we'll be getting into, also augmented analytics and generative AI type things. If you're interested in those topics, submit an abstract or register for the conference. We'll have registration open soon at andouc.org/AND Summit 2024. Any other comments from panelists?
Thank you, Dan,
Well,
and
thank you, everybody.
the team for organizing this.
Really appreciate the opportunity to share this. We are planning on doing this with every release. So look at we have one date scheduled for, I believe it's October 19th, if I have that right. And we'll be doing this again against the September release coming out eventually. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, if you've got a favorite that you want to talk to instead of to us talk, we would love to have you help present. So
come join us.
Yeah, more the merrier.
Just
Thank you,
reach out to us.
Philippe and Lalitha. Dan, you all have a great week.
Bye.
Same
Thanks,
for you. Thank
everyone.
you, guys. Bye-bye.